Those who grew up with a good father. What was the most important thing you learned from him? You are the only person you have to live with for the rest of your life. In other words, take responsibility for what you do. Learn how to move past your mistakes and realize that your actions have consequences. My great GMA always said, wherever you go, self goes with you. Thank you. You, Gain Aussie Furry for Bernie. When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences? Question mark, exclamation mark, question mark. Update. Thanks for all the love. I never expected this kind of response. I think my dad would be amazed at how something so simple made a huge difference. Stay curious. My dad taught me to indulge my love for learning. Want to read a history of the Aztecs at 6 years old. He took me to the library and we got a real history book and he helped explain what I had a hard time reading. Wanna help in the garage? He taught me all the tools and taught me how to clean them and oil them and how to use them. He always took me seriously and answered every question. He was my greatest teacher and my biggest defender and my rock. I lost him in 2003 and I have missed him every minute since then. How I raised my kids has a whole lot to do with how he raised me. To kids, time equals love. If you don't know how to make things better, just listen. Boy, was he right. Not enough people know how to do this. In the whole making things better aspect, my dad taught me that you should always leave a place better or at least the same as when you came into it. He was referring to camping in the woods, but I tried to apply it to a ton of other things. 2. Explain. How do you use this advice? To appreciate nature. The power of sitting in silence and looking at the night sky. Blessed are those who do not fear solitude, who are not afraid of their own company, who are not always desperately looking for something to do, something to amuse themselves with, something to judge. Paulo Coelho. My dad taught me to always be kind. Kindness isn't loud. It doesn't need to be stated. It should just be inherent in everything you do. You don't have to like everyone or treat them well if they don't treat you well. But you should try to approach everyone with the same kindness you'd wish they'd give you. Same. While it was never literally taught, he has always been a role model in how he treated me and others with kindness and empathy. If you ever feel like you have a problem, just know you can live a full happy life without alcohol. He couldn't control it, and neither could I. He gave it up so he could have his son in his life. I gave it up because of his example. Bless you both. I still struggle with the bottom of the bottle in my old man's absence. My dad's been sober for 12 years. I've been sober for 47 days. He's my go-to for wisdom like this. Cheers. If it was easy, everyone would do it. This is what I have to remind myself when my job gets real tough. Everyone in my family loves to quit when the going gets tough, and it's something I've really had to work hard to fight against. Alternatively, my dad used to say, if this was rocket science, they wouldn't let people like you do it. This is the big, good stuff. I learned how to be selfless, how to feed everyone else before I sit down, how to enjoy taking care of someone. I learned how to grow vegetables. I learned how to fix a sink, or rig something together if I need to. I learned diplomacy and patience and practicality. I learned to pay attention to what sounds my car is making, how it feels when it turns or when I let go of the wheel. I learned resilience and perseverance. I learned that I should work hard and do the best I can every time I can, and that that's all I can do. He taught me responsibility and morals, regardless of religion or politics. He taught me how to chop parsley and cook steak, how to fry potatoes for breakfast, and how to slice tomatoes thin. My father is an immigrant, an engineer, a practical but sensitive and caring man. I wouldn't be who I am or have what I do without him. Everything I am or will be is owed to him. And my mother, who is equally magnanimous. If it counts, I learned not to emotionally and physically abuse my kids from my father. I am the man and father I am today, because I swore I would be all things that my father was not. Responsibility, accountability and love are three things I value highly. Of course it counts. Sometimes we learn this from people unintentionally. Even on bad situations our minds are learning something. Lefty Lucy, righty tighty. Edit. Holy S my first award! Exclamation mark. I'll forward it to my dad. Thanks kind stranger! Exclamation mark. Measure twice, cut once is what I was going to say. My dad's saying was, rules are for fools, but they're a guide for the wise. My favorite quote came from the early 2000s. He died 11 years ago. If the way this world works ever starts to make sense to you, you need to start worrying about yourself. My dad would say that his dad told him that if things wouldn't make sense if you didn't pay attention. My dad told me that the opposite would be true by the time I grew up. Right he was. Would you mind explaining that like I'm 5? That's pretty good. To always make your loved ones a priority. Make it your purpose. My dad worked hard to give us a comfortable life and more opportunities than most. And after what I can only was a long and tiring day, the first thing he'd do was sit and watch cartoons with me and my brothers while asking us about our day. And when he was forced to quit his job and decided to start up his own company, go on for half a year without income, I can only imagine how stressful it was to be so uncertain about the future while providing for a family of 6. I was slightly young, but I never knew anything was wrong. He never let it show. And even though he worked probably 10 hours a day, he always took the time to ask me how I was doing and go to every important event with us. My dad was and is a superhero. Always will be. The next thing I'd say I learned from him was patience. Whenever he was upset with me or thought there was something up, he'd ask me about it and wait until I was done with my side before saying anything. Really made me feel heard and less worried to tell him something even when I knew it's not what he'd like to hear. Don't be an idiot changed my life. Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? Kiss keep it simple stupid great advice hurts my feelings every time. Be kind, be polite, and saying you'll be somewhere on time means 10 minutes early. My dad always says that about being on time. I think about that advice when I'm late for something, which is way too often. The saying you'll be somewhere on time means 10 minutes early. My dad would do this, but my mom would make him 30 minutes late. That good is relative. I pretty much hated my dad growing up. We fought constantly and I thought he got off on trying to control me. It took me a long time to see how much he loved me, how much he sacrificed for me. Yeah, we had some bad times, but there were good days and there were perfect moments. My dad taught me that no one is perfect, but he taught me to fight for my family, to love my family, and even if it's not perfect, it was enough. This thread means a lot to me. I see my dad in a lot of these positive comments and he passed away earlier this year. I'm just sitting here crying, thinking about my hero pleading face. I lost mine 3 years ago. He was my best friend. Sending you the biggest hugs. Lost my dad 2 years ago. The first without them were the hardest birthdays, holidays, etc. Heart. Curiosity. Just being eager to learn how stuff works. In general, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I just like to observe things and wonder things about them. Might sound banal, but a lot of people seem to lack this. Compounding interest. Dad hitting me with the 12% APR on my allowance. Eighth wonder of the world. To always do what is honest. Never cheat. Never try and get one over on anybody. Keep your word. Show respect to everybody. Family as a priority. Time and effort. Words don't need to waste it. Don't talk for the sake of hearing your own voice. Speech has power. Use it responsibly. especially if it involves a good pun. Education is everything. Always lend a hand if you can.